One of the biggest editing mistakes photographers make is this. They over-sharpen their images to the point where they make them look crunchy and fake. If you've ever wondered how to get that perfect level of crispness without destroying detail, then you're going to want to pay attention to today's video because I'm going to show you how to use the Unsharp Mask tool in DxO Photolab 8 to get the most out of your images. Hey, by the way, I'm Jeff from Magnolia Photography SC, professional wildlife photographer in Charleston, South Carolina. If you are returning to the channel, I want to welcome you back and thank you. And if you are new to the channel, well, I want to welcome you in and thank you for joining us today. I hope you're excited to learn more about the sharpening process inside of DxO Photolab 8 because this can make a huge difference to the quality of your photographs. So I'll tell you what, let's jump into DxO and take a look. Welcome into DxO Photolab 8 as we get set to take a look at the Unsharp Mask tool. But before we jump in, there are a couple of points that we need to quickly discuss. The first one being, if we are going to be using the Unsharp Mask tool or sharpening our photos on any level, and this is true of any photo editor, you do not want to be using a JPEG image. You want to be working on a raw file format. This is really an unnecessary step if you're talking about JPEG images, right? And that is one of the many downsides of JPEG images is that they go through this compression and processing inside of your camera, and part of that includes sharpening. So we don't want to take a JPEG image that's been sharpened and then apply even more sharpening to it, right? We're just gonna have the opposite effect of what we're looking to accomplish, and it's just going to make the photo look worse. So again, no JPEGs, keep it to the raw file format. The other thing that we want to keep in mind is that when we are sharpening our photos, we want to be very aware of what size we are viewing our image. You will see up here right now at the top of the screen, I have a size of 47%, right? So when we are sharpening our images, we do not want to be viewing our image any less than 75%. And ideally, we should really be viewing it at 100%. This is going to just make sure that we can really see what is happening with the details in our images as we apply those adjustments with the Unsharp Mask tool. So how the Unsharp Mask tool works inside of DxO is it's looking at our original image and then it's going to make a copy in the background, of course, but it's going to make a copy of that photo and it's going to make it a blurry image. It's then going to take the original file and subtract that from the blurry image that it created, and that is going to leave us with only the finest details for which sharpening is going to be applied. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's jump over to the Unsharp Mask tool now and take a look at the different sliders that we have available to us and see what they really mean and what they really do. Okay, so if we come over to the right side of the screen where I have my toolbar, we're going to see the Unsharp Mask tool sitting over here. And we have four sliders. We have intensity, we have radius, we have the threshold, and we have the edge offset. So let's start with intensity. Intensity is really just what it sounds like, right? As we move this slider, we are going to either increase the amount of sharpness that we're applying to the photo, or we're going to decrease it. So let's zoom into 100% right now on our photo, and we'll just slide this guy over here. And I might even go in a little bit closer just so we can get a little better look. It never hurts to go a little bit closer. You just want to make sure, like I said earlier, that you're at least 75%. So now as we go ahead and move the intensity slider, you can see what is happening here, right? We're increasing the sharpness a little bit, but you can also see that it's kind of cranking up the noise in the image as well, right? This is kind of what happens with sharpening, and this is why it's very easy to over-sharpen your image and really degrade it more than help it. So when we are using the intensity tool, DxO actually recommends that you keep this slider somewhere between the default setting of 100 and a maximum setting of 200. And I have found in my experience using this tool that those numbers work really well. There have been a few photos where I've brought it up to about 225 or 250, and it has worked well without giving us that over-sharpened look. But for the most part, I think you're going to find that the majority of your images are going to fall between that 100 and 200 mark. The next tool that we have is the radius tool. And what this tool is doing is it is setting the thickness of the edges to be sharpened. Well, more easily said, what it's kind of doing is it's determining how subtle the actual sharpening is going to be. So this is a tool that is something I recommend that you exercise even more caution with. Let's take a look at what happens when we move this tool. So the default setting is 0.50, right? But as we expand it out, you can see that we can increase the sharpness, but it doesn't take much for this tool to really start degrading the image. So this has just been my experience with using this tool inside of DxO. So we want to be cautious with the radius tool. Generally speaking, I recommend that you keep it somewhere between 0.5 and 0.7. That seems to give the best results on the images that I've been working on. So of course, you can experiment a little bit with this on your photos to see what you think and see what results you're getting. But I would just caution you that you're probably better off to go, err on the lower side than you are on the higher side with this particular tool. In most cases, I'll keep it right around 0.5 to 0.6 for kind of my everyday editing. Okay, so our next slider is the threshold slider. And what this slider is going to do is it is going to set the level above which details are going to be sharpened, and it's going to set the level below which details won't be sharpened. This tool is really aimed at eliminating those fine details that we don't want sharpened because we don't want to give the appearance of those turning into noise in our image. So this is a really good tool to help combat that effect from happening. Now, the default setting is 4, and DxO recommends that you keep this setting somewhere between 4 and 10. And once again, in my experience of using this tool with my images, I'm seeing that that holds really true. So that is something that you're going to want to pay attention to as well. As you start to move this slider, we'll take a look at what happens. It's really hard to see the actual effect with this tool as you move the slider. It doesn't look like there's a lot happening, but in your photo, there's actually more happening than we see visibly. So just keep that in mind. Don't be fooled by that thinking, oh, I really need to continue to bump this up because I'm really not seeing anything happening. So keep this tool between 4 and 10, even though you may not see what's actually going on. The last slider that we're going to take a look at is the edge offset slider. So let's kind of look at a camera lens for a second and how the optics essentially work, right? As we're taking a picture, we are going to have the sharpest part of our image favoring the center of the frame. And as we work out towards the edges, those pixels are going to get a little bit softer as they expand outward. That is pretty natural. Now, of course, it all depends on your lens and how much of that effect is taking place. Generally speaking, if we're using higher quality lenses, right, this effect tends to be a little less pronounced. But if we're using a cheap lens or just a less expensive lens, we probably are going to find that that softness factor creeps in a little bit more into our images. That's what edge offset is designed to do. It's designed to help kind of balance out the sharpness or the softness that is taking place from the center of the frame out towards the edges. And it's going to give a little bit of extra sharpness to those pixels around the edge. Now, what's really cool, in my opinion, when it comes to DxO and how it handles this, is it's really not doing it on kind of like just a cookie cutter approach. It's actually evaluating pixels by each pixel individually. So it's a really fine-tuned kind of edit with this edge offset tool. And it can just be a great way, if you like that look, to sharpen up those edges a little bit. Personally, I don't really use this tool very much. I don't mind the edges going a little bit softer. I kind of feel like that helps to play in to isolating your subject a little bit more and making them pop from the photo a little bit more. So it's completely a preference type of tool, I think. And so you can experiment with that and see what kind of results you get and see whether or not you like adding a little sharpness or whether you just want to leave the photo as is. Okay, now that we've taken a look at the Unsharp Mask tool and the different sliders that we have available to us to really make those adjustments and try to pull out the maximum detail, let's take a look at a couple of photos and look at how it actually works in real life when we make these adjustments. And we'll start off by taking a look at this white ibis here. And, we haven't done anything to the photo yet other than crop it and zoom it in a little bit. So what I would do first is I would go ahead and apply my noise reduction. I'm just going to apply the Deep Prime 3 here inside of DxO. And we can see right now that the noise reduction has been applied, so we are good to go. And remember, when we get out of that loop viewer that I just had up, right? This is the loop viewer. We will see the noise reduction applied. When we turn that off, we do not. We're still going to see noise in our image. And the reason for that, again, I always like to stress this, is that there's an algorithm going on behind the scenes that applies that noise reduction. And if we were to constantly see the image with the noise reduction applied, that would have to be constantly running in the background. Well, that would call on a lot of system resources, and that would slow down the editing process. So we can either look at it through the loop viewer, or we can just really quickly export it to our desktop to take a look at the image with noise reduction applied if we want to check it out to see what it's actually going to look like. So we will do that when we're done sharpening, just to take a look at the final image. But let's jump in and take a look at these settings. So again, this is the intensity mask, right? We're going to figure out how much sharpening we want to apply here. And again, we want to keep this generally between 100 and 200. And you can see again, as we go up, right, it really starts to increase that noise. That's what sharpening tends to do. So I'm probably going to keep this probably right around the 175 mark, somewhere right in there. And then I'm going to take the radius and I'm just going to bump it up a little bit to see what happens here. And I'm going to keep this right around the 0.60 mark. I'm kind of liking how that looks. Okay, and as we go to the threshold, I am going to just really keep this around +4. This is one where you want to keep it between 4 and 10. And so I think I'm just going to keep it at +4. I usually keep this threshold setting pretty much at the default setting for the most part. I'm not going to worry about edge offset at this point. I think that, I'm not, again, like I said to you earlier, I'm not really concerned about a little bit of softness as the lens goes out towards the edges. So I'm just going to leave that as there. Now, a couple of things that we could do when we look at this image, right? We've applied our sharpening now, and that can change the noise levels as we were mentioning. So we could always come back here to our sliders inside of the denoising software, and we could change this. So the luminance here is what controls the actual noise reduction. And again, I would say just tread carefully if you're going to make these adjustments with the denoising tool inside of DxO and really any software. If you're going to apply a little bit more reduction, you just want to be careful, because sometimes when we add additional noise reduction, it can just really start to kind of soften and muddy up the photo a little bit, and it doesn't look very good. Now, I will say DxO does a really good job with increasing the luminance. I mean, I think we could probably, you can see as we go all the way up, you can see that it does get a little bit softer, but there's a lot of programs out there where we would see even more of the image being degraded by going all the way up. So I think DxO has a little bit more of a conservative approach when we start to go to those higher values, and it really just keeps more of our detail preserved. So I would maybe take this luminance value up a little bit. We were at 40. I'm going to go to like 55. And then what we can do is we can use this force detail slider. And this too is a way to add just a little bit of sharpening if you want to your image. And you can see if we go way up, again, the way DxO handles it, it's not extreme when we go way up, right? These changes tend to be a little bit more subtle and a little bit more controlled, but I might take it from the 0 and I might bring it up to like 25 just to add that little extra touch of detail. And that's really where I would leave this. So I'm going to zoom back out and just kind of look at the photo now to kind of give it this assessment, right? And I'm kind of looking for those things that I was talking about in the very opening of this video. Are we making anything look extra crunchy? Are we making anything look extra fake? And to my eye, this looks really good. I'm going to just export this to the desktop and we can take a look at this a little bit later. Let's move to our next example and we'll bring up one of my favorite birds. And this is, as you know, this is the roseate spoonbill. And we're going to zoom into our 100% mark so that we can really get a good feel for what's happening. And that's 200. So if I could click on the right one, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? And so I just cannot not click on that. All right, there we go. I can get this. And so now we're at 100%, and I might just bump up the exposure just a little bit, just so we can see that. And the Deep Prime 3 noise reduction is applied already to the image. So let's go down and take a look at the Unsharp Mask tools and make our adjustments. So if we're looking at this, we can kind of see the sharpness going on. I really see through the eye and through this part of the bill, right? I can really see some changes taking place. And I think you can really tell if I bump this all the way up to 500, watch when I turn off Unsharp Mask. Look at that, right? And I turn it back on, I turn it back off. You can see that there's a considerable difference there, right? And this is kind of what I'm talking about when we talk about making things look a little too crunchy and it starts to become a little too fake, right? And that's what is exactly happening here, right? This is a lot more subtle and natural. And then when we turn this on, it's just really crunchy and it's just bringing out so much detail that it looks unnatural. And so that's why we want to avoid going too high with our sharpening. So we're going to bring this down. I'm going to put this though right at the 200 mark. I might even go a little bit higher, right? We want to keep it typically between 100 and 200. I'm going to go to 225 and let's turn it on and off to see what we're getting. And I like that. I mean, we can see that there's a little bit of a difference there. We can see a little change happening. And I always say this, but hopefully you guys can pick it up with the compression of this video because sometimes that tends to mask what I'm doing here in real life. But again, it's subtle, but we can see it. And I like that effect. All right, that looks good. So now we're going to go to the radius, right? And if you can see if I bumped up this radius real high too, again, you can see how it becomes crunchy and unnatural looking. It looks really ridiculous the higher we go up. So we're going to keep this, I'm going to keep this one right at 0.62 and I'm going to go over here and turn it on and off just so I can see the total effect so far. And I really like how it's affecting the eyeball. So take a look at that as I turn this on and off. So there's off and there's on. And to me, it just feels like it gives the eye a little bit of sharpness and it feels like it's almost giving it just a little extra to that catch light that's there. And it just gives a little bit more life to the eyeball, in my opinion. So I'll do it a couple more times so you can see what I'm talking about. See that happening? So I turn it off. And when I turn it on, you see how that catch light just gets a little bit enhanced. So that looks really good to me. Again, I'm not going to touch the threshold and I'm not going to touch the edge offset. I really don't see anything increase with noise. I mean, we could go and just bump this up to 50 just to maybe combat a little bit of noise that might creep back in from the additional sharpness that we put in, especially since I kind of exceeded the intensity level, right? I went to that 225 mark where DxO recommends not going above 200. So because of that, I'm going to increase that luminance to combat possible noise coming in. Force details, I really don't see a need to use this. If you want to use it a little bit, you certainly could. I'm going to leave it at that, and then I'm going to zoom back out so we can take a look at the image as a whole, and I like it, right? Nothing glaring here. Nothing is obvious that it's been sharpened. We don't have that over-sharpened look. It's looking pretty good. I will just export this one to the desktop as well, just so we can look at the image with a noise reduction. And while that's happening, I'll open up the other IBIS that we did here. So we didn't do any other editing to this photo, right? This is simply applying some noise reduction and applying the Unsharp Mask tool. And this is what it looks like with the noise reduction and the sharpening. And so I think what we've done here is achieved our goal of sharpening our image, but keeping everything very natural looking. I always look at sharpening as the same way that I explain when we're adding a vignette to a photo, right? We want a vignette to be subtle. We want it to be strong enough that the viewer's eye is naturally drawn in to our subject, but we don't want it to be so strong that it grabs the viewer's attention and they're going, oh yeah, why is there a dark circle around the subject here, right? What's happening? So we don't want that to happen. And that's the same way we want to look at sharpening, right? We want it to be something that is really happening underneath the surface. There's an effect coming from it, but it's not obvious to the viewer. So that one looks really good. Let's take a look at our roseate spoonbill in real life. And this too looks great from a sharpening and denoising perspective. Again, we didn't put any other edits in here. We didn't do color, contrast, all those things. Now I've showed you guys in previous videos additional steps that I like to give the eyes a little bit more detail. I go into local adjustments and I will, brighten or darken the pupil and the iris. And that can give the photo a little bit more life and a little bit more sharpness as well without actually sharpening it. So that is something that you could add into this workflow as well. All right, guys, that is where we're going to leave today's video. That is how we use the Unsharp Mask tool inside of DxO 8. Like I said, if you want to learn more about DxO, if you are new to it and you want to learn the program, or maybe you've been using it for a while, but you just want to elevate your editing skills, well, go over to my store at magnoliaphotographysc.com/store, and you can check out my DxO Photolab 8 Masterclass. There will also be a link in the show notes to take you over to the store as well. And if you want to download a free trial of DxO, I have a link in the show notes. Be sure to use that link with my discount code, especially if you make a purchase. That discount code is Magnolia. That'll save you 15% off any of your purchases, but that link will also take you over so you can check out their products. And like I said, download a 30-day free trial of any of their products. It's a great way to test out the product and see it for yourself and have a lot of fun with it. Other than that, I want to thank you for joining me today. And you know what? You might want to check out this next video as well.